Okay, well, good afternoon now, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here. As Tim said, the Tourfish project is a coming together of two Interreg European projects, so GIFs and Fish and Chips. So the next two presentations, we just want to give you a little bit of a flavour for these two projects. I'm going to talk about GIFs, the geography of inshore fishing and sustainability, and then after, Bridget is going to give an introduction into Fish and Chips. So what is GIFs? As I said, it stands for the Geography of Inshore Fishing and Sustainability. It's an Interreg for a project funded through the 2Cs programme. It was launched in January 2000, and we are frantically trying to finish off all of our work and our outputs to finish the project by September this year. The project involves 6 partners from 4 member states, from the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands and France. In England, we have the University of Greenwich, we're the lead partner on the project, the University of Brighton, we've got the Municipality of Middelburg in the Netherlands, VLIS, the Flanders Marine Institute in Belgium, and our 2 French partners, AgroCampus West in Rennes, and the University of Brest. Now, the main overarching aim of the project is to promote the importance of inshore fishing for the development of sustainable coastal communities through an exploration and a sharing of the social, the economic, and the cultural impacts of inshore fishing. We want to think about facilitating the incorporation of these cultural, social and economic factors more explicitly into fisheries and maritime policy and coastal regeneration strategies and sustainable community development. And the kind of rationale behind the project was that often in policy, a lot of the emphasis has been around, and quite rightly so, the environmental issues, the problems with fish stocks and so on, but it's failed to look at and take account of the deep social and cultural impacts and importance of fishing for a lot of coastal communities. So the idea of GIFs was to try and redress the balance a little bit. Where are we undertaking this project? So it's a very big study area. You can see we go from Flanders we go from the southern Netherlands through Flanders and the whole of northern France down to Finisterre, and then in England right from North Norfolk all the way around the south coast right the way down to Cornwall. So whatever we've done within the project, we want to have relevance in this very broad area. Now, when we came together as a partnership, one of the first, not issues, but one of the first discussions we had to have was, what is inshore fishing? It became very clear that when we're talking about England, France, Belgium and the Netherlands, the way we think about inshore fishing, the way we define it is very different. For us in England, inshore fishing is small-scale, under 10-metre vessels that operate 6, maybe 12 nautical miles offshore. And it became very clear that actually vessels like this, and there's not many of them that operate in this way in Belgium and the Netherlands, and their inshore fleet are much larger boats, but they're operating in inshore waters. So we had lots of discussions and debates about how within our project we could define what we mean by inshore fishing. So we took a pragmatic approach, a pragmatic definition, that we would look at fishing activity that was taking place up to 12 nautical miles offshore. We also included within this not just fishing on boats, but fishing on foot, so gathering of shellfish and so on, and the unique fishing on horseback in Oost-Dunkirk in Belgium. And we divided the project into 3 main work packages, three main activities. So we wanted to look at coastal zone governance and marine fishing. So what are the governance structures that are in place? We wanted to look at fishing places and community, so the social and cultural aspects, and then looking at economy and regeneration in fishing communities. And I'm very quickly just going to go through each of these work packages and just give you a flavour for the sorts of things we've been doing. So the first work package, coastal zone governance and marine fishing, this is where we wanted to try to identify the different management frameworks and approaches that are in existence across this broad study area. We took a twofold approach. Firstly, we wanted to get a broad understanding of national and regional policies and governance activities and frameworks that were influencing inshore fisheries. And then we did a more detailed case study approach. So I think it was 8 case studies across the GIFs area, which are indicated on the map here, where a very, very in-depth case study approach was taken, interviews undertaken with fisheries, policymakers, stakeholders, planners, and fisheries industry representatives within those case studies to really try to understand at the local level, identifying best practice in governments, are there examples of co-management and so on that we could draw upon. And then the second work package, economy and regeneration in fishing communities. Within this, we tried to assess the direct, and these are very economic terms, direct, indirect, induced benefits of inshore fishing and the non-market benefits values of inshore fisheries. So firstly, the direct, indirect and induced benefits. So this really was trying to assess what is the economic importance of fisheries in coastal places. So a couple of parts of the project looked at trying to assess, evaluate, estimate what the economic importance of both commercial fishing and recreational fishing is to a local economy. We also wanted to find out what the indirect economic benefits are. So by looking at how fishermen spend money, so on their suppliers and so on, what knock-on effect did this activity have in fishing communities? So that was one aspect. And then induced economic effects of fishing activities to the tourism sector. This clearly has a link to what we're talking about in this conference. And in this, what we tried to do is to estimate what the loss in tourism revenue would be in a coastal community if there was no fishing industry anymore. And some of the results from that have been quite surprising. I think in Hastings, the estimated losses if we didn't have a fishing industry here were quite dramatic. So that was really some interesting findings. Then we looked at trying to estimate the non-market value of inshore fishing. And again, this was focusing on what is the value, the economic value of having fishing in a place for tourism. And in this, there was an economic valuation exercise was undertaken. And the bottom line figure that emerged out of this was that people are willing to pay 2.27 euros more to go to a place because it's got a fishing fleet there. So if you add up however many tourists you've got in a place and you times that by 2.27, you can see that the economic impact of having a fishing fleet can be quite high. And then finally, a programme of regeneration in Arnhem-Muiden, and it's great to see so many people here from the community of Arnhem-Muiden here today. And in this, there was a programme of street refurbishment, economic regeneration, working with the women's think tank in Arnhem-Muiden to come up with lots of ideas for new economic opportunities in there. And the idea was to make it a better place for people to live, to work, and also to visit. So again, a really clear link into what we're talking about here in Tourfish. And then our third work package, thinking about fishing places and community. So here we wanted to try to explore what some of these social and cultural values were. And a lot of the methods that we used in this element were drawing on quite qualitative approaches to try and sort of get at some of the cultural values. So firstly, community and place identity. We wanted to try and find out how fishing is contributing to this idea of sense of place. So how is it making a difference? How is it contributing to identity, place character in coastal communities? And we did this through a questionnaire survey. And also we ran a photo project where we used a professional photographer, and you can see some of the images that he took in the exhibition on the stage. Researcher photography, but also we asked local communities to take photographs as well. And we've held a series of community photographic exhibitions. So really trying to use visual media to capture some of these quite intangible feelings, perceptions about what the cultural value of fishing might be. We have a PhD researcher who's looking at sense of place identity and tourism. So how do tourists feel about having fishing in a place? So again, lots of links here to what we're doing in Tourfish. And then very importantly, thinking about the role of women in coastal communities, thinking about how women are very important for social cohesion in coastal communities. And this has been part of a PhD project, over 100 interviews with women. I know a lot of the ladies here have been interviewed as part of this, and some really interesting findings coming out about how often the role of women in fishing is quite invisible. And so this is trying to put a spotlight on that and make it visible. Fishing activity past and present. The aim of this was to try and think about how fishing activity has changed over time, and that they've taken lots of historical data sets and to try and to see how fishing landings, employment and value has changed. So this can inform what we do in the future. And finally, fisher-led alternative education in Hastings. You'll be hearing more about some of this in the session, I think it's tomorrow, on alternative education in Hastings. But working with the fishing community, developing education packs for use with schools, and also for informing the wider public and visitors to Hastings about the fishing activities. So again, a clear link to the Tourfish project. And as I say, we're coming into the final phase of the GIFs project, so it became clear to us that within our project we'd used a whole range of different approaches, different methods to try and understand how fishing is contributing socially and culturally to communities. So we decided the best way to bring this all together would be in a toolkit, which is aimed both at policymakers but also at fishing community stakeholders as well. So if they're thinking about trying to capture some of these values, what are the sorts of methods, the sorts of approaches they might want to use to try and do that. So we're bringing that all together in a toolkit, which is being illustrated with both the methods, the approaches that we've used, and also some case studies. As I say, aimed at both policymakers and fishing communities. And then we're also developing an interactive thematic map, which we've called the GIFs Wiki. And on this, there'll be more detailed case studies. So in the toolkit, perhaps more of a snapshot of a case study. Here, the much more detailed case studies and links to the full project reports, some of which might be quite technical. So if you're interested in depth, the methods that we used, this will all be available on our GIFs Wiki by the end of the year. And we are planning our final finale stakeholder event, which everybody is welcome to come to. It's taking place on Wednesday, the 3rd of September, up at our campus at Greenwich. It's a beautiful listed campus, World Heritage status, the Old Royal Naval College in Greenwich. And here we'll be launching the toolkit and introducing people to what they might be able to use the GIFs Wiki for, and giving some of the final results and findings from the project. And then finally, just to reflect on some of the things that have come out of the GIFs project and how they relate to what we're talking about here in Tourfish. I think you can see that many of the activities that we've been involved in have focused quite explicitly on inshore fishing and tourism, and also sustainable development has underpinned everything that we've been doing. And there's evidence in the work that we've done that inshore fishing contributes very much to tourism in coastal places. But the question that keeps coming up is, but what do the fishing communities get back from having tourism there? So I think this is some of the things that we're probably going to be talking about in the next couple of days. And so to think about some of the opportunities for fishing communities to gain some tourism value from their fisheries. And it was really interesting for us to come together with the other project, Fish and Chips, who were focusing on the agro-food sector, where some of the ideas about place branding, regional branding and so on are perhaps a little more developed than in the fisheries sector. And were there lessons that we could learn from the agro-food sector in fisheries, and are there lessons from fisheries that can inform the agro-food sector? So really interesting coming together of the two projects. Question time? So I've got some questions too. The first question, I know I've only given you a very brief introduction of what we've done in the project and what the outputs will be, but potentially, do you think that the GIFs toolkit that we're producing could be of use to you? Okay, that's interesting. So, the majority of people think potentially it could be. So, great, that's really good. Oh, goodness. And then the online interactive map and wiki, again, you don't really know what's in it, but potentially, do you think this might be something that you would find quite useful? Again, yeah. Perhaps a little bit more mixed, but yeah. That's all very positive. Hopefully we're going in the right direction. So, yeah, thank you very much. If you want any more information about the GIFs project, please visit our website. Thank you.